Watch your ears. Healthy clap. I get so paranoid about everything recording. Honestly, I'm the worst. And then a bit of composure juice.
Yeah. Always necessary.
First of the day.
These are quite fancy coasters, really, aren't they?
They are. IKEA. 75p jobs.
Oh.
Get yourself down there.
Yeah. I might just do it this way.
I mean, that's a risky game.
Why?
That is a risky game.
It's not risky.
Alright.
Because then it won't like lift up every time.
You're the one who'll be turned into a meme if it does end up falling over. Not me. How you doing? You right?
I'm good. I'm good, thank you.
We've done one of these before, haven't we?
We have. And you messed it up.
I did fuck it up completely. As soon as we finished recording and I pressed stop, it said temporary files will be deleted. And I was like, will they? And they did.
Yeah, we tried to get the engineering.
And it was gone, banished. Although we did have 20 minutes, you said.
Yeah. But you were like, no, I'm not releasing it if it's not the whole thing.
No, if it's not 2 hours, if it's not overindulgent, I don't want it. But we're here now, and a lot has changed. How long ago was that? I guess that was like 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah, we were at Red Bull Studios. Mm-hmm. If that marks any time frame for you.
But no, it's all a blur, to be honest. It's all in the past.
Yeah, it was a long time ago.
So much has changed that you're now
8.5
months pregnant?
8 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when I thought about kicking off the podcast again, I was like, that is such a wild perspective to be seeing the world through.
Yeah.
I need to have a conversation with you. And I'll probably want to have one, 2 weeks after you've popped it out.
Yeah.
And be like, so what is art now to you?
Yeah.
I mean, it's something that I know I'll never be able to even come close to comprehending. So I guess this conversation is my first foray into some kind of understanding.
That's a nice word.
Foray?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I know one other person who had a kid. That was Cyan, who I was like quite close to and like was kind of there when it was all happening.
Yeah.
I think for her, she was kind of just like, I just don't want to talk about it. Like, I just want to just do it. But I think that was more like everyday life stuff.
I enjoy speaking about it though.
Well, that's good.
I'm as intrigued as everyone else, I guess. Because when it's your like first experience as well, you still have all the questions and the need for answers as other people who will never be pregnant or aren't pregnant yet.
I guess also it's like kind of like such a direct path to honesty and sincerity as well. It's like, because you can't be anything other than that if you really want to figure out what's actually going on. You have to be so present in it.
Yeah, exactly.
But before we get into any more questions, I have to ask you now, a few weeks away from being with child,
yes,
what is art?
I think now I think it's patience, I've come to that answer and understanding during this period of time, because it's like being pregnant, you're waiting for something every day, and for the most part of the pregnancy it feels very slow and very long and quite boring because you're waiting for something. And then you just kind of have to, it's kind of in the same way that you see your plants grow, and like every week or every 2 weeks there'll be a new leaf, and then gradually over time it's twice as big as it was when you got it.
So for you,
and you never like, do you know what I mean? You don't judge that process.
Yeah.
You just let it happen. And so every day, like, this baby is getting bigger, or now it can open its eyes, now it can hear, now it can do this. And in relation to art in that way, I think it's just, some banging.
That's not a baby kicking, is it?
Yeah, in relation to art, I think it's just important to see your work that way as well, which is what I've felt mostly. And I haven't been, it's kind of taken away my impulse to rush or the need to, I don't know, try and play catch up with anyone or compare yourself to anyone else's work or else's journey, which I knew anyway, but then it just made it really easy to practice that, I guess.
Did that come as a revelation for you then? Like, obviously it's slowly unfolded as a new information, but before the pregnancy or whatever, were you in a rush? Did you feel like I need to get things out without properly letting them form?
Yeah, I always was aware that I shouldn't think that way, and you shouldn't compare and you shouldn't do this, and I was actively trying not to. And I think in a lot of ways I had got to some kind of point where I wasn't doing that. But still, I had that like 20%, 30% that was still kind of behaving in that way. And yeah, and I always had this need to like create and put something out. And I always used to ask myself, like, why am I doing this? Am I doing this because I need to actually create, or am I doing this to show other people that I'm still working? And it's actually quite hard to figure that out, like which one you're doing. And it might be both, which is why it's hard to figure out. And then, yeah, during pregnancy, it wasn't like I had this big revelation, but it just kind of happened naturally. It's almost like reaching that place when you're young or like when you're really old where you just don't, I'm allowed to swear?
Of course you are.
Where you just don't like give a fuck about anything. It kind of feels like that when people are like, oh, you don't care when you got grey hairs, you'll stop caring. It's almost that being in that space, or what I imagine that space to be.
So the ticket to liberation is a baby.
Yeah.
Okay, I get it now. I understand the population boom in the last couple of generations. But then this has come in tandem with you writing your first feature. Yes. Which is like a scary coincidence.
Yeah.
Or like a very necessary coincidence.
Yeah, I think the timing's been really great actually, because I did a first draft before I was pregnant. And then at that point I wasn't even applying for iFeatures. I didn't know I was going to apply for it. And then we did apply for it and then we got it. And with iFeatures it's like, you don't need, so they're not expecting a first draft from me till January. And so obviously the draft I have at the moment is going to change dramatically and is in the process of being changed dramatically. But that has helped me so much, because if I had to write a first draft now from scratch, I don't know how I would be able to do that as effectively as I would have been, just because he's due in like 5 weeks.
Yeah. That would have been stress.
And then there's Christmas and there's everything else. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, it would have been a lot of stuff. So I'm happy I've got that working draft and that structure that I can mold. Pardon me. Instead of starting from the beginning. So the timing's actually been really perfect, especially money wise, because you get paid for it. Like they have a development fund for us.
Oh, amazing.
So yeah, I get paid to write basically, and I've just shot series 2 of Enterprise.
Congratulations.
Thanks, which was fun doing while I was pregnant.
Yeah.
So yeah, timing wise, it's been really good. Did they write it into
your character?
They did. I told them really early.
Yeah.
Really early.
Is that a way of securing yourself into the second season? Be like, look, I'm pregnant now. This is a great storyline.
I didn't know, because first I thought that we might be able to hide it, because we usually shoot in June. So the pilot and season 1 we shot in June, July. So I thought, don't do that.
Sorry. If I do that,
because it just scares me.
I just have to do it every now and then, just to make sure.
So I thought, we'd be able to hide the bump. But then they said they were shooting in September. And I was like, oh, well.
Well, in that case.
By the way.
Gonna have to get the writing team back together.
Really grateful and blessed to be able to have done that.
So are you able to speak about what the feature's about?
Yeah.
Okay. What's the feature about?
It is called Surviving Earth, well, working title. And it is a drama set in present day Bristol about Vlad, who is a Serbian immigrant who fled the Yugoslav wars after serving a year in the military police. And as a result of that, he was an addict. So he came to Bristol and got clean and became a drug counselor himself and started his own Balkan band, at which is the point where we meet him in the film.
What's a Balkan band?
Balkan music is like gypsy.
Oh, okay. Like an actual band.
Yeah, band, like gypsy, jazzy, funky, crazy stuff. And yeah, it's based on my dad. And so, yeah, the point we meet him in the film is that point where he's now a drug counselor and he's starting his own band in Bristol, and he's still trying to navigate his trauma and his like kind of addiction that still lies beneath the surface. And as he helps other people through counseling and through music, he's still kind of dealing with his own stuff.
So what was the main motivation for you wanting to tell this story?
I guess through my short films, I've always kind of tried to tell some aspect of trauma through like a young person's perspective, which wasn't at all to do with that story.
The experience of trauma or the resolution of trauma?
My dad died in 2015 from a heroin overdose. So I was 21. So, and we weren't expecting it. So we didn't know we thought he was clean at the time. I didn't know he was using. He was like highly functioning. So nobody really knew. So I guess dealing with that shock at that age, I kind of, as I got through it, or as I was trying to work through it, I was also just interested in how, 20-something-year-olds deal with that specific thing and just trauma in general, whatever that may be. So I tried to explore that with my shorts without actually touching on the real story. I was just trying to find other ways to do it.
Yeah, figure out the
vocabulary. But then whenever I told anyone about my dad, they were always like, oh, he sounds like such an interesting person, and da-da-da-da. And I would tell the story I just told you. And people would always want to know more. So then I thought, why don't I just tell this story as a film?
Were you aware of your initial short films? Were you aware of that this was your process of understanding how you were ultimately going to tell the most important story of your life up to that point?
No. I was just making what I wanted to make. And I guess in hindsight, I was able to kind of be like, oh, all of these stories are under this topic. And
what a coincidence.
Yeah, and like, oh, let me decode that. Yeah. Why am I doing that?
Well, it's so interesting that your creative desire and creative urge was to reconcile some understanding of yourself and your own experiences, even without, when you finally step back from it, you're like, oh Jesus, that's what I was subconsciously doing, without even knowing that I wanted to do it. And when I've had moments like that with songs. Like I wrote a song that I put out, In Her Hands, and I wrote that when I thought I was in love with somebody, and then I actually fell in love with somebody and listened to it again, and it was like, oh Jesus Christ, like it hit me in a way that was so different, and I was like, oh, I was putting it out there what I really wanted at that time. And then it wasn't until like maybe a year or even 2 years after I released the song, and I was like, oh Jesus Christ, like I was trying to guide myself towards what I needed. It was like, well, how did I even know I needed that? You know, it's like I didn't even know, but I knew. And it's such a mind-bending
thing to realize, and also like thing to understand about art and why we are who we are and why we do what we do. And so sometimes it's just like inconceivable.
I understand completely your point about process, and there is art in the process, and the process is an art form in itself, but then ultimately the product of it, or wherever it's guiding you to, is a whole other conversation to be had. And I think that's sometimes what I try to nail down in these conversations, is like, where is it guiding us to, you know? After what do you look like on the other side of this film? After surviving Earth, like ultimately it's a story about your dad surviving his experiences, but it's also a story about Thea and surviving her experiences. And what does that look like, you know, on the other side of reconciliation and understanding and ultimately compassion? What do you think you might look like? And it's tied in as well with the child. It's
I know, it's like, I don't know.
That's a
the thing is
bomb
like,
of love.
I always tell, when I'm giving advice to other people, it's like, don't think of, it's hard because there's always this balance with making stuff where, because you're getting money from other people, they always want to know, who is this for? Where's this going? What are your plans for it? Blah, blah, blah. But then that messes up your creative process. So it's hard. As much as you need to think about things like that, you also shouldn't, because you can't let like what you think it might achieve affect how you create it, because then you end up with something like maybe that wouldn't be as authentic as it would have been if you just kind of let yourself do.
Well, similar to what we were just saying of like unconsciously we know where we need to go, and consciously we think we know where we need to go. And if we try to, steer it towards what we think, we'll end up perverting its natural course.
Exactly.
So just letting whatever is guide and essentially just follow. Maybe what is art, it's just a guide, a compass, a map of some sort to guide you where. Oh, well, you don't know until you don't know
until you're there. And you never know. It's like when I always have this conversation with my partner, because he's a musician. It's like when we talk about people who like are trying to create, like, oh, let's all get in a studio and, oh, we need to make this hit. And it's like no one knows what is if it's going to be a hit. It's like you don't decide that. The people decide that once you release whatever.
You can make an impression of a hit.
Yeah.
I've been in sessions that are like that. And there's just an A&R who's failed at every attempt to try and make a hit ever, because that is the intention.
Yeah.
And when you try to say, look, we don't know what a hit is, you just make good music. It's like it falls on completely deaf ears.
No, I know.
People prescribe it to this formula. This, have you seen the OA?
Yeah.
So like you can do these little 5 dance moves and suddenly you're in another dimension and everyone's rich and successful and they're happy and famous and stuff. It's like, if only, you know?
Exactly.
If only we could really get a grasp on it that well. It might make the process a little less scary and might make people want to do it more.
Yeah, and more sure about their lives.
How do you feel like pregnancy has assisted you in this process of writing the feature?
I think, again, it goes back to what I was saying at the beginning about just taking time. And I think it's just let me understand appreciate the process more.
Well, you're writing about a parent.
Yeah.
While becoming a parent.
Yeah.
So your perspective is changing. So less esoteric and more really about the work itself.
Yeah.
How does that shift in perspective of becoming what you're writing about helped you?
It's difficult because it's like this whole process and the whole development and meetings I've had with script editors and all the execs that are involved. It's like they've been telling me to free myself from the truth of the story in order to create a better film, basically. Because sometimes, believe it or not, in film, the truth isn't more interesting than...
I don't know, this whole thread's making me want to smash the studio
up. isn't more interesting than what you could create, which is something that I've never believed in, but I'm coming to understand. I wouldn't say realize, I know it to be true, but during this process, I'm coming to understand why they say that or they think that. As
I slowly calm myself down from that, I do understand when I think about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yeah.
So have you seen it?
Yeah.
So that ends however it ends. Won't spoil it for anybody who hasn't seen it. But I do get it in that sense. You
Yeah.
can offer a reconciliation or a resolution that wasn't afforded in real life. And
Yeah.
that can change the way people process an experience.
Yeah, but
Which
it
I
is,
do find poetic and responsible and really mature, actually. That's how I felt watching Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
the ending was my favourite bit about it, about the film.
But then that gets tricky because you're writing a film about your life, essentially.
Yeah.
It's obviously your dad's life, but it's your life as well. So
Yeah. Yeah, it is really difficult.
Once you start altering history, you're kind of giving yourself the life that maybe this is me projecting, I guess, that you wish you had or that you could have had. And then, I don't know, where does that take you as an
It's
art?
not so much that to that extent. So, like,
Okay.
I'm not doing like a Tarantino and changing the ending of anything.
Sorry if that spoiled it.
Sorry. I mean, anyway. My dad still dies in the film as he did in real life. He still, all the like main things
Okay.
are the same, but the things that are changing, which is actually more difficult, is because I'm writing everything from his perspective. I'm changing how I found out about information in real life in order to make it a better experience for an audience.
Okay.
I'm changing, like, for example, he played the harmonica in his band, and I think he wrote lyrics sometimes, but his bandmate wrote loads of the lyrics and he translated them into Serbian and they used to sing them in Serbian, and loads of the lyrics sometimes were just chatting shit. Like, they were just saying whatever they wanted to say. It didn't matter because in Serbian it sounded however it sounded. But one of the notes from the script editor, which I thought was really good, was to have Vlad's character as the lyricist in order to, I guess, see things more clearly through his eyes and use the music as more of a punctuation of his feelings, I guess, and like a diary, and so we can use that to understand him more. So it's things like that.
Okay.
Which I agree make it more interesting than him just playing the harmonica and not being a lyricist for an audience. So yeah, it's loads of things like that. So going back to your original question, it's hard for me to think about me as a parent and then writing this about a parent, I guess, because I'm having to think about a time where I wasn't pregnant, or it's got nothing to do with me being pregnant, and I'm very much focusing on how to tell that period of time in the best way. So I'm not really thinking about myself now, I guess, because there's already so much to try and figure out about what I'm writing about, I guess.
So just to challenge your last point a little bit about editing the truth or editing reality, what if your dad not being the lyricist or just not putting his perspective or expressing it, what if that was part of his situation that led to his troubles? Then don't you almost edit that out?
This is why I'm making a film is so hard, because it's like I'm also going through the thing where I know when I don't agree with a note. So when someone gives me a note and I don't want to do it, I'm like, nah, this isn't what I want. But when someone gives me a note that makes sense, it doesn't mean that I want to do it, but it's a good idea, like the script editor offered. It's hard to know, like, not about whose idea is better, but it's hard to know, like, was my initial instinct just as good as that note? Like, how do you know which direction to go for?
Or how do you make the choice?
I don't know. I've been trying to, I'm in that process now, because this is the first time, because it's a feature film as well. I've only had development on one of my short films. All the others I had just done myself. I sent them to some friends.
Which short film was that had development?
Eli, because it was with Film London.
Do you feel like that work had something that the previous work didn't? Like, did you think that was a step up?
I think technically, visually, because we had a budget, but it changed through that development. It was not the film that I submitted. It was completely different because of the development.
Is that a positive or a negative?
I don't know. It hasn't done near as well as my other stuff. So, which I don't know.
When you say hasn't done as well,
in terms of like
resonance or views, like
like resonance, all of it, I think.
Okay.
People just didn't seem to respond to it as well as my other stuff.
Does that make it harder for you now to then be like, I trusted them once before and I followed the notes and...
I mean, this process, the people are very different. I feel like I have a lot more creative control than I did with Eli. So I don't feel negative about it in that way. I feel more like I'm willing to take help and ideas, but now it's just about like, deciding. But now because I have that freedom to hear other people's ideas and still decide if I should do it or not, it just makes it like, how do I...
Well, I guess this is you finding your voice as a filmmaker, right? Being able to listen to an idea and shoot it down and be like, no, I know what is best.
Yeah. And there has been like some offers that I've shot down and I've been like, no, it's easy, like I said, to know which ones you don't want to do.
It's easy to tell the difference between a good and a bad one.
Yeah.
But then there's this next thing, which is like a good, a good and a right one? Because it's good for entertainment, but is it right and true to the story?
Exactly.
So that's quite an interesting sacrifice to talk about for an artist.
Yeah.
You know, truth and entertainment.
Yeah, it's difficult. And also it's like, then you just get, I've read like a chapter of a writing book, like a script writing book, or a couple of chapters. And I liked the book. It was a good book, but I didn't finish it because I just feel like, again, it's not a formula. It shouldn't be prescribed and all of this stuff.
And you've got a script to write.
And all of this stuff. But then at the same time, you still get caught up with like, so like you go down this, I feel like I always go down this road of like, fuck the system, man. I'm just going to do what I want. I'm just going to write how I want to write. I've never been to film school. I've never been taught all of this. I'm all self-taught, blah, blah, blah. And then sometimes someone gives you a note, someone suggests something and you're like, oh yeah, this makes sense as well. Like maybe I should follow this structure to a certain extent. And yeah, it's just hard to... Like, for example, at the beginning, at the moment, in this draft that I have, my dad, or Vlad's character, I'll separate myself. Vlad's character, like, from the jump, you can see that he's, like, he leaves the house with a packet of tobacco, right? Then, blah, 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 he goes to the bar after his band has performed. And he gets offered a drink. And he tells the barman, no, I've stopped drinking, I've stopped smoking. But we always obviously know he's lying because we've already seen him with the tobacco, for example. Which my instinct is like, yeah, I like this because it's a good character trait and da-da-da. But then I don't know what I got the other day is like, oh, maybe you should hold that back for later on in the film. So maybe at the beginning he is actually trying harder to not smoke and not drink and all of those things. So you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like...
But
which I don't know.
We're taking away the nuance from the character.
I know, but then it's like I understand in terms of then building, I guess, a stronger structure or narrative. I understand why that makes sense.
You almost
I
went
caught
viral.
it. I caught it.
I told you that was treacherous.
So it's just hard. It's just things like that, like that example.
No, I believe it. It's like I'm trying to get a grasp of it now and be like, what would I do in that situation? It is a fine line. It's a conversation. I went out for dinner with my girlfriend Helena and my mentor Phil the other day, and I spoke about the mark of like a great artist. For me, this is musically, but I'm starting to notice it more in films. I find it harder to grasp in fine art and literature.
Yeah.
But with the more visceral art forms, it's easier to pick out when an artist is aware of its audience. Like he or she, they are creating, but are taking a little glimpse over their shoulder every now and then, and being like, I know you're there, and I know you're along for the ride, and I'm gonna play to that. And both Helena and Phil were like, no, never think about the audience, because that just tarnishes it. I'm like, no, you are the audience.
Yeah.
Like, so it has to be like a trip. It has to be a journey. It has to be manipulative. It has to lull you into places and then take turns. Like, it can't just be formless and like splat. You know, there has to be some sculpting of it. There has to be some consideration for the audience. And it was like this big fight. I know, a really big fight actually over dinner for about 45 minutes. And I was like, look, at the end of the day, if you didn't have the audience in mind, you wouldn't release anything, right? We have an impulse to share these stories and to gift them to people for a reason, to give them some kind of experience and a hope that maybe we can transform some kind of perspective, you know? At least that's what I think. And it's such a fine line, like you're experiencing now, of how much do I consider you? How much do I let you know I'm considering you and doing what I want to do anyway?
Yeah.
The giving and the taking away, it's like that. It's great for you, because when you're in that place, you know you're in the territory of the greats, because you're not so single track minded of just like, I need to just get this done. People are pushing you into places of where you have to consider the ride, you have to consider the trip,
because all the people that are giving you notes are the audience, as much as they're execs or they're paying for it. They are an audience. The reason they have these opinions is because they're in their head, they're thinking, oh, if I was watching this movie, would I want to see this? Would I want to see that?
But they do want to root for a hero in the sense of like, he's really trying to give up.
Yeah, exactly.
But at the same time, it's like, you as a filmmaker and just as a human being know that human beings aren't so compartmentalized. You know, it's like constantly in flux. Yeah, I am trying, but I can't quite kick the habit. But I do have the best intentions, but I also am vulnerable. It's like that. It's just a broader spectrum, I guess. Yeah. But what, you know, where do you draw the line?
It's really difficult. It's just, I think you just have to, I don't know, just go with instinct. I don't know. Or try something out, do you know what I mean, in one draft. Just because I write something out of a draft or write something in doesn't mean it has to stay that way. I can always bring things back.
Yeah, but drafts are so much different to the real thing, you know, when you're sat in front of the screen.
Yeah. But that's what I mean. I guess it's just trying something out in terms of in the writing process and then being sure by the time you get to the shoot. Where the other thing that's hard about development is like so much effort is put into the script and all your notes and which is frustrating because the end product isn't a script. It's like the end product is a film that people are going to watch. Nobody's going to read the script. So it's hard because all the nuances that maybe someone feels are missing, you know, you'll be able to create when you're shooting. And it's hard to write all of those things in because a lot of the times they're reading so many scripts a day or a week, and it's like loads of people just skim through the stage directions and the actions in the script, which is where loads of the details are.
That's where the nuance is.
That's
where the unspeakable truths are.
Exactly. And if you just scan through it, and you always get notes like, oh, cut down your actions, like only write 3 lines or whatever, and it's like, but then you're going to tell me something's missing. And if I write a paragraph of action, which is like all the nuances that I will be showing on camera, you won't read it because you'll just be like, oh, this is too long. And you'll just jump straight to the dialogue and then you'll miss something.
Spectrum is like someone like a Chris Nolan who you could push your film in that direction, like if you're talented, because he's undeniably great, but also lacks maybe a bit of understanding of humanity.
Yeah.
And then you could push all the way to the other side of like a... Well, actually, no, I give a better... I was going to say Lynn Ramsey and Chris Nolan, but they're not really that comparable. But like a Stanley Kubrick and a Andrei Tarkovsky. It's like one is really entertaining, but also is missing that spirit a little bit. And then the other one is like so stretched out, but so soulful. But in modern terms, it is more of like a Chris Nolan, and I don't know who the other end of the spectrum is.
I always use Barry Jenkins as an example, who did Moonlight.
Yeah, of course.
Because I think Moonlight is such a good example of exactly what we're talking about. Because me and like other filmmaker friends were like, if Moonlight was in the same position we are in, it would have never got through to the end process. Like, it would have never got through the same development that we're going through now. It just wouldn't have. And yet it won an Oscar. And yeah, it had these distributors and all of this stuff. And it's a beautiful, poetic film. And I've read the script, and the script is really poetic, like in its actions and stage directions. It's beautiful. And then, so I always think of that as a reference to myself. To like, just remember to, you know, make what you want to make. Because it's throughout history across all genres of art, and all types of art, it's always the people that have broken the rules that everyone knows and everyone cares about, and who have changed some aspect of something.
So do you feel like the rising capitalization on film as a medium has taken the nuance out of stories and out of characters to the point where we find ourselves now like afraid of our own nuances and afraid of our own duality and afraid of our own whirlwind of experience? We kind of expect this compartmentalized, very structured experience in our lives, and get overwhelmed when we realize actually we're spinning like 5 or 6 different plates at the same time. And then we get like, everyone has anxiety or everyone has depression, because in the stories that we tell now, we don't have that spectrum of experience. We don't have the 6 storylines going on at the same time. We just have that 3-act structure, beginning, middle, and end, conflict and resolution.
Yeah, which is what I've never been interested in. And I think maybe because I've never done any script writing classes or gone to any of these places, maybe I don't connect with that, because I'm just telling story through how I understand it, which isn't a 3-act structure.
No.
And so, like, a director read my treatment of Surviving Earth, and he was like, oh, like, it's kind of like soap opera, how can all these things happen to one person? And I was just like, but that's what happens to people in real life. Like, they're experiencing all of these things at once or in a short period of time.
And that's where the best stories are, is when people get inundated with problems and get so weighed down by it that it takes a heroic effort to rise up out of it.
Yeah.
Or sometimes don't, you know? It's like, but that's where the story and the truth is, because that's where we will all find ourselves at some point.
Yeah,
we will all be spinning too many plates. We will all be just overwhelmed. That's like a fact. And if we start taking that out of our art, we're not equipping people properly to deal with life. But do you feel that responsibility?
With this story in particular, I've always kind of stuck to what happened. Like, the truth of the matter was that, this is a person that's first of all dealing with his historic context, which we don't see on a day-to-day basis, but that is like a massive part of what's affecting him now, even if it's 20 years later. And then on top of that, he's dealing with bills and this and this and this and this and this and this. It's not just one thing. Like, we'd all be dead if it was only one thing that affected us. If we were all only dealing with late bills and debt, we'd all be dead. Do you know what I mean?
Well, what do you mean?
Like, it's not just the one thing that kills you.
Yeah.
It's like everything. It's not just debt. It's also, this and this. Oh, my relationship with my daughter's breaking down. Oh, and I also have to think about what happened to me 20 years ago. But then in film or with notes, it's like, yeah, like you said, people always want to simplify it for an audience so they can understand, oh, this led him here. This is why it happened. When it's like, no, it's all of these things.
It's really interesting to pick this apart, because I feel when I try to apply this to like the layman or just the everyday person on or the audience, basically, when people are going through something in their life and they're looking for that one thing, because I know I've been in that position, like, what's wrong? What, you know?
Yeah.
It's not just one thing.
No.
It's having more problems than you have hands to carry them.
Yeah.
That feels like a valuable lesson. You know?
They like to spoon feed audiences, do you know what I mean? To make sure everyone understands why this happened. And yeah, I don't always think that's helpful.
No.
And it's like one of my favourite bits and heartbreaking bits in Moonlight is when Juan doesn't come back in like in the middle part of the film. And it's like, where's he gone? No one mentioned it. Well, it gets mentioned once, like, that he's dead. But you don't see it happening. You don't know it's going to happen. There's no inkling of that he's in a dangerous situation in his life. And he plays such a pivotal part at the beginning of the film as a character, and then he's just gone. And it upset me when I was watching it, because I was like, no, where has he gone? But at the same time, it's so beautiful because that wasn't explained, and that's fine. Like, we're not stupid. We can draw the dots when we're watching and digesting art. We don't have to have all the answers, which I strongly believe and which I enjoy most about, digesting art, because it's your own interpretation of things.
Well, trust is such a big part of it.
Yeah.
It's not really something that's spoke about either. It's not... I rarely hear trust your audience, and also trust your own ability to tell the story in a way where it won't be misunderstood. That gets you way more bang for your buck in the cinema, you know, when you're given some responsibility as well as some escape.
Yeah.
Of like, no, I believe that you're put together well enough, or you've experienced enough to be able to interpret this in a positive way.
Although I was tweeting about a film once because it didn't answer some questions that I was saying, like, films don't have to answer questions. I was kind of supporting the film. And some guy replied to me and was like, I'm already paying for a cinema ticket. I shouldn't also have to pay to use my imagination.
I mean, that's fair enough.
And I was like, wow. Maybe this is the average person. Like, maybe this is like the average cinema goer's view. Do you know what I mean?
It's the other way around, man. I feel like it's Hollywood's fault.
Yeah.
They create the...
Yeah, no, that's true.
They create the problem. If somehow the filmmaker can figure out a way to spoon feed the audience a little bit of themselves, then I think that's a winning formula. But I don't.
Also, I think a lot of audience members who just want to be spoon-fed won't be watching my films anyway.
That's true. I worked on a film recently about Grand Theft Auto. The head of Rockstar, the guy who took over, he basically says, and this is what made Grand Theft Auto like boom into the biggest media thing that's ever existed.
Yeah.
Made over $1 billion. He said, like, what good is your product if people don't get it, if people aren't accessible, if people don't find it accessible? And that's like true to a certain extent. McDonald's isn't the best restaurant in the world just because it's eaten by billions of people. But there is a point of where if people don't experience it, what good is it? Is that something that you also wrestle with?
The aim is that, you want to reach as many people as possible. But I'm also not like, I'm not really hung up on, if you're not interested, you're not interested. I can't make something like it isn't McDonald's, do you know what I mean? Like, I can't make a piece of work that for everyone. So I think if you have you just have your own goals, or like where you, like, oh, I don't know, a BAFTA nomination or get into Sundance or Cannes or whatever. It's like if you have those goals and you're like, I want to get it here. And then the people that see it as a result of that is a good thing. But then, I don't know, you kind of have, like, I don't expect it to be, like, the first film that pops up on your Netflix, you know what I mean? And that's fine. I'm fine with that.
Mm-hmm.
For this particular film, I think it changes depending on what you're making as well. Like, some things you'd hope maybe to be more commercial. But for this particular film, I'm not that bothered into, I don't care if the average person doesn't go and see it.
The only way to kind of do that and remain integral is to make a kids film.
Yeah.
Is to make like a Pixar movie,
Yeah, it's
right?
true.
If you want to
That's
make
true.
something that's universal, aim it at children.
Yeah.
Which is like, I think that's a very honourable way to do it, to make something.
Or like Studio Ghibli.
Oh yeah, exactly.
I was watching one of Hayao Miyazaki's interviews, and he was saying, like, maybe it's not so much in his country, but he was like, he makes they're for kids, like, and they're for everyone, but they're also kids movies because there's always children in them, and it's like
it's
the
all
lead
about
is always
children's.
children, and he was just saying, I think he quoted someone else, but he was like, oh, you have to show children something inconceivable and they'll understand it later, just because they're not going to understand it now.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you shouldn't tell them it or show them it, which I think is great, which I always think about when I think of parenting.
Well, I sometimes feel like that when I make music. I feel like, and I haven't succeeded in this yet, maybe one song actually, I want it to sound like a lullaby.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like that's the best type of music, but then I don't even really believe that now, because, you know, I want to be a bit rock and roll, I want to be a bit edgy, but I know as time goes on, I'll slowly and slowly creep closer towards every song putting you to sleep, or something that you play in the background while your kid like is in the cot, face down, with his butt in the air, like that. I think is the long-term goal, because it's what stands the test of time, like a nursery rhyme. Like, row, row, row your boat gently down the stream, merrily, 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 life is but a dream.
Yeah.
You get to like 24 or whatever, and you're like, that is a trip. That nursery rhyme is mental.
Yeah, exactly.
You're like, what?
Yeah.
And that's the best way, like a fairy tale, a nursery rhyme, a lullaby, a kid's book, or a kid's film. That's how things get immortalized, because they're so simple but so profound that they just stick.
Yeah.
And so nuanced as well, actually. When you think about a Studio Ghibli film, even Pixar films are incredibly nuanced, but no one really, they don't get the same scrutiny that a drama might get.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
Yeah, that's true. On my way here, I was listening to James Blake and the Rosalia song.
Yeah. Barefoot in the Park.
Yeah. And I've always loved the song. But then today, for some reason, I really, you know, sometimes you listen to a song so many times, but then you suddenly hear a lyric and you're like, wait, what?
What lyric was it?
He said, in the first verse, he's like, who needs to hallucinate? Who needs to pray? Who needs balance? I see you every day. And I've always I think because the last line is that just before the chorus. So I always hear who needs balance, I see you every day a lot. And I always thought that was a great line anyway. But for some reason today, I heard him say, who needs to hallucinate? And then I had to put him up. I was like, wait, this is too good. This is too good.
I realised I hadn't listened to that album as much as I thought I would.
Yeah.
Since like the first month that it came out.
Oh, yeah.
I've struggled to listen to James Blake albums in full anyway.
No, I do as well.
I had the worst acid trip / best acid trip of my life listening to a James Blake album, but I can't remember it might have been Digital Lion, the song, which is just like pure synths and like sounds of lorries and stuff.
Excuse me.
And when you're in a dark place, that is not the best thing to listen to. I was like crawling across the floor trying to get to the stop button. And I had Alejandro Jodorowsky Dance of Reality playing in the background. There's a scene where him as a little boy, it's a biopic, him as a little boy is afraid of the dark. He sees death for the first time. He sees a dead body, and then it's like, it's coming, darkness is coming. So his mum gets boot polish out and puts it all over his skin, so he's like jet black like the dark.
Yeah.
And she's like, you are part of the darkness, it's part of you. And then she's like, chase me around the house. So he's got this like little kid, completely matte black, really shiny, like creeping through the house. This mental song playing, and I'm like crawling, trying to get to the stop button. I get like halfway and I've just got no fight in me left. I just let go, and I had like visions. Like I was me, but then I fell through the floor.
Mm-hmm.
And I was falling and falling and falling.
Where were you actually?
I was in a shed. I was in a shed. I modelled this place on the shed. The shed was a really nice shed, but it like had this kind of vibe, really, really nice and rustic. And I fell through the floor, and then I was falling, and I was like, oh, this is it. I'm gonna lose my mind. I'm gonna never come out of this place. And then slowly and slowly I hit the floor, and then as I hit the floor I like shattered into glass. And in this glass I saw like every memory that I'd ever had. And I was just like floating through the chaos, and I was like, oh wow, that happened to me once. Oh, that happened to me. Oh, maybe that's the reason why I'm a little bit fucked up. Oh, okay, cool. And then I managed to like come back and be like, oh, okay, so I've got some stuff that I need to figure out now. So it was great.
It was good result.
Yeah, thank you, James Blake. And I remember I walked past him once outside Pizza Pilgrims in Soho. And I thought, is this too weird of a story to go up to him and tell? Probably I'll curb it. One day I might get him on the podcast, and then we can have the conversation.
He'd probably enjoy that story.
I think he would.
I feel like if you told that to any artist, they'd be like, really?
Yeah.
I went to his concert in London this year.
How was it?
It was good. It was the beginning of my pregnancy, and I was about 4 months, yeah. And he had like this whole 20-minute maybe techno section.
Yeah.
And I was just like,
it's too much.
I was like, I actually can't. I couldn't do it. It was too much.
I bet it's
with
a crazy
the lights,
light show as well. Proper.
I had to actually like look down. For some of it, I had to look down because it was just, I don't know if it's because I was pregnant that made it worse.
You were 3 months pregnant?
Yeah, maybe 4.
When you found out, what was the first thing that ran through your mind?
I don't know. I think we just smiled. I don't know what the first thing was.
I mean, that's a good enough response.
We were just like...
Was it like this?
Yeah. Just like... yeah, basically. It's because I'd taken a few tests before the positive one and they were all negative, so I wasn't expecting it
to
be positive.
You just thought, I'll do one more.
Yeah, I was just like, oh, whatever.
So you could have done one and then 2 months down the line been like...
Hold on. Yeah. So I was like, oh, I was really honestly expecting it to be negative. Yeah. So then when it wasn't.
And as you slowly lead up to due date, do you have like, not expectations, anticipations, just like, are you nervous, I guess?
No, I'm excited. I'm really excited to go into labour.
What's the excitement?
I don't know. I feel like it's like, I'm really anticipating it. Like, when you're waiting for the day that you go on holiday.
But you're waiting for the
pain.
Yeah, probably the most painful experience.
Yeah, but that's why
life.
I think it's even more. I'm gonna just find myself hilarious because I'm so excited, and then I'm just gonna be in the worst pain, and I'm just gonna be laughing at myself like, ha! Look at you now.
Are you one of those people though that's like, if you're afraid of something, you're like, I just want to do it right now. I just want to do it.
No. Yeah. I don't know sometimes, but I'm not afraid. I don't feel afraid at all. It's more just like, I want to do it. Like, I actually want to I want to experience it.
And how about the other half? Is he like, I would be shitting myself.
No, he's like, now he's got around to the idea of cutting the cord. At first he was like, no, I'm scared. All of this. But now he's like, okay with it. We had an antenatal class the other day.
So that's like, so you want to reassure her, validate her.
Yeah, it was like a 5.5 hour class.
All of the different ways to tell you you're doing good, keep going, keep breathing, keep pushing.
Yeah, loads of stuff.
Oh man,
it was fun.
There's a big conversation that happens at the moment about, it's not about equality essentially, but it's about there being no difference between men and women.
Yeah.
and that we're the same. But I feel like that experience alone, you being in it and the man just observing and supporting, you going into that place alone, pulling life out by yourself, and him not being able to experience or ever understand it, that creates such a difference in perspective. I know in myself, like when I think about it, and similarly, you'll never be able to experience his side of not knowing what that feels like.
No, exactly, yeah.
It rubbishes the idea of similarity, you know? Is that conversation that you've had with each other?
About what, like the physical, or not being able to understand exactly?
Yeah, I don't really know what I'm asking, because this is the first time I've ever really been able to have this conversation with somebody. A big part of my perspective, and I guess masculinity and just being a man, the foundation of that is never knowing that experience. I'll never know the pool of life that you're about to dip into and bring something back out of. And similarly, you'll never know what it's like to not know that place.
Yeah.
So after this experience, you'll have some kind of certainty, you know, like you'll be, this is me completely projecting as a man who has no understanding of what's actually about to happen.
Yeah.
But you're about to go to that place, or where we all came from, and come back and tell the story. And the only way I get to experience that is in death. That's not a conversation that we have.
No.
That's not a conversation. When we talk about masculinity, femininity, equality, and all of that stuff, we don't have that conversation. And it feels even weird talking about it, because I might either be considered like crazy or something. Not that I care about that, but it's such a separation.
We haven't had that specific conversation. We're always talking about differences in, masculinity, femininity, what toxic masculinity is or what toxic femininity is, and all of those things. But we haven't actually spoken about what you're trying to describe.
Trying? Am I not doing it very well?
No, you are doing it well, but I think no one can actually describe it. But someone said something interesting on set for Enterprise. One of the makeup artists was like, oh, it must be weird because it's like, as a pregnant woman, you have some expectations from your partner. And to be honest, I don't know about other people, but for me, I don't have like a lot, because of all the differences you just described. I don't expect you to understand how I feel, because you can't, and all of these things. And she was just saying it must be weird because it's essentially like, because women are going through it every day, and like you're able to bond in a different way that your partner's bonding with the unborn child. But then it's like men just get given this baby and it's like, this is yours now. Whereas women, we've been feeling it.
Yeah.
Every day for however many months, even before you could start feeling it moving. Everything's happening. You feel sick or you feel tired or you have all of these results of pregnancy, but men don't have that. They can feel it through your skin when it starts to kick and stuff. But that's about it in terms of actually physically being able to feel something. And so she was like, it must be weird. Someone just handing you a baby and being like, oh, this is yours now. Like, now you're a dad. Whereas women have had that preparation for 9 months.
And even, I guess, the anticipation of it happening in the future means that the connection's there the whole time.
Yeah, exactly.
And it speaks to I guess, what people would label as a crisis of masculinity at the moment. But I don't feel like we accept the separateness of masculinity, the isolation of masculinity. Like you said, you're essentially giving a piece of yourself to your partner, but your partner's in this bubble, and I'm sure I'll be in the position as well, in this bubble of like, what? I'm so cut off from this experience.
Yeah.
How I can only do an impression, you know?
Exactly.
I can only perform in abstracts, whereas the feminine experience is like so live and direct and
Yeah,
so
yeah.
unspeakable.
It's just a hard position to be in, and he is very, very supportive and very tender and very understanding as much as he can be. Like when my back hurts or when I'm like,
Yeah.
like last night, this baby was doing the most. Like he was like, stop doing it, stop moving, because he was just moving in all directions. His foot like gets stuck in my rib, and then it's just a lot of stuff. So it's like you can see it when it gets to this stage, at least. Anyone else, not even your partner, but anyone else can like see what you're going through, and they can sympathize with you in that way.
When you have keeping this conversation in mind, when you find out you're gonna have a boy, do you feel like, he's gonna have a very different experience to me because he's a man? Does it make you feel like you have to figure out a way to prepare him for that, or do your best to create the conditions, like the safest conditions for him to explore that for himself? Obviously, this is a long way in the future, and you're just focused on getting him out.
It's weird because before you know the gender, you're kind of like, you think about both sides. And then as soon as I knew it was a boy, I was like, I didn't even think about girls at all. And that was kind of like it's hard to know like what exactly you plan for, because it all comes so naturally to you, and you're just kind of figuring out. Like at the moment, I probably thought about the first maybe 3 years, like toddler stage.
Yeah,
and we're always like, oh, how, yeah.
It's all very pragmatic.
But also like just communicating with children, boy or girl. And then there's like the other stage of, because all these communicative lessons are taught from birth. And so especially with a boy, it's like how to not plant the seeds for a child or a man who's going to be blocked in some way in the future, in the communicative sense, you know what I mean? Or emotion sense, or like whatever. Because you see some parents now, do you know what I mean? As simple as, oh, stop crying, stop being a girl. Comments like that, for example, that people say and don't think about. So all of that stuff, me and my partner have both been very like, had conversations about how to avoid that and how to raise a son in a more free way, fluid way. Rather than imposing certain societal things on him. But in terms of like beyond that, I haven't thought. We've imagined him as like a teenager and whatever. But then it's like, I guess it's just whatever they bring you, do you know what I mean? Then you deal with at the time.
Yeah. But the societal norm, I guess, is to not speak about the differences between men and women. For me, it's always been like how I'm terrified of having kids, because I don't know if I had a boy how to tell him like, yeah, you're separate, you're isolated, you're in this almost impenetrable bubble. No one's really gonna get it. But then also, if I had a girl, it's like, oh well, I guess I just watch then and make sure everything is safe, and because I can't really tell her anything because she knows it all, and she'll discover it on her own. Because I read in a book once, like, men have to go out and learn things. Women just have to discover them in themselves, which I do believe to be true. I do believe like I believe that also whatever we need is inside both of us, but men need that external stimulation and experience where I feel like a woman can sit back into herself and uncover those truths.
No, yeah, I agree. I think I've experienced that with friends, with whoever. Yeah, just as you grow and live. And like when you're younger, you're always like, why do men have to wait to get to this point, to this extreme measure before they realize, oh shit, I fucked up. Do you know what I mean? Like, why do you have to get all the way to the edge of the cliff before you realize something? But it's just exactly that quote that you just described is true. Yeah, parenting, it's just, you're a guide, you know? You're just a guide. You're not here to tell them who they can be, who they can't be, what they should be. They're just another person. They're not yours. They don't belong to you. You know what I mean? It's like just a guide on their journey, and you just equip them with the tools that they need and the experiences that you've had.
And I think you'll do a fantastic job. And I think
Thank
you're
you.
already doing a fantastic job, just even starting from that place there. I think that's like, only good things can come from that. But it's also liberating in my own experience to know that even if you fuck it up completely, not you, even if I fuck it up completely, at least I've served as an example of what not to do.
That's true. That's true.
So as long as you can raise your kid to be like, learn from other people's mistakes, you set yourself up for success. It's like, well, you know, you can't resent me that much because I showed you how not to play
How
the
not
game.
to be, yeah.
I gave you a perfect map, whether you knew it or not.
I'm also excited about like how much I will learn, do you know what I mean, from them, or relearn or unlearn.
Yeah, that's
all of those things. Like I read this book, The Book You Wish Your Parents Had Read, and like, the main takeaway that I had from it was just putting yourself in a child's shoes, which none of us remember to do because we're older than them and we're sure that we know better, and well, I know what you're going through, it's not that bad, you only fell over, whatever. Instead of actually being like, oh, how would that feel to have, like, for example, you feel like you're in the best place on earth, you're on this roundabout, and then you've fallen off it, do you know what I mean? It's like, in their heads, it's a lot bigger than we think it is. And it's just like remembering to see things from that point of view. And they were also just like saying that play for children is like the equivalent of work for us. So if a child's in the middle of a game and you're like, we need to go now, put your coat on, they're more likely to have a tantrum rather than being like, okay, 5 minutes, then we're going to go. Because it's like, if you was in the middle of something and someone said, we're going now, like right now, you'd be annoyed.
Have you thought about the workload of being a mum and also a full-time filmmaker?
I have no idea what... I don't think I have any idea what's in store for me, honestly. I'm just like... I've just heard... I mean, people obviously just tell me. I think it's more with a newborn, like just the constantness of them. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to prepare myself. I mean, I can't.
Yeah, of course.
I was just like... I know I'm just gonna bring him everywhere I can.
Yeah, absolutely.
And not feel a way about it.
I guess it's two occupations that require consistent presence.
Yeah.
And maybe that will complement each other. You know, it's like the athlete the other day who got dropped by Nike because she had a baby.
Oh, yeah.
And then 10 months later came back and smashed the world record.
Yeah.
It's like maybe that necessity for presence actually benefits every facet of your life. Obviously, it can be overwhelming, but as we discovered earlier, it's like, as long as you can not think, I have to be present all the time, and realize that it's actually all of these little subsections of where you have to be present, maybe that's like more beneficial.
Yeah, my friend in LA, she's a photographer, filmmaker. She has a 2-year-old, but she did a post a while ago, and she just felt, and it was like she had put a camera in the corner of her room. And being freelance and doing all these things, you work from home a lot, so she put a camera in the corner of her room and she just filmed. I don't know how long it was like a time lapse, and like so much of the time, and her daughter's in her room with her, like to her own devices, sometimes wanting her attention, sometimes not. And my friend, the mother, is like on her laptop a lot, or she's looking at stuff and and she did a post caption and she was like, oh, she feels guilty when she watches stuff like this back,
because she's not attending to the child.
Yeah, and stuff like that. And then I was talking to my mum about it, who's been in the early years as a teacher for her whole life. So she's always with 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds. And she was just saying how, like, you being there is present.
Physically.
Is the presence. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's not like when they're talking to you, do you know what I mean? You're on WhatsApp. You're doing something productive.
And I guess it's a good energy to be around, like,
Yeah,
if you're focused.
yeah, this focus and this productive
Yeah.
work and this, my mum was just saying, like, the presence is what makes a child happiest in her experience.
Nice.
And that doesn't necessarily mean that you have they have your attention the whole day. Just means that
it's also
you're,
good
like,
to create that
aware.
boundary as well, I guess, of like, you're not the most important thing in my life, even though you are. I'm not going to dedicate all my time to you. I think that is a good, because I have friends of friends who have kids, and, you know, it's like that kid is there all day, every day, and I don't know if that creates a healthy dynamic. I try not to judge too much, but like, when the kid has the run of the parents, and it's like, oh, I never find time for me. It's like, well, you have to make it. You have to do it, because you have to show the kid that, like, it's all about nuance and
because your life goes on. Do you know what I mean? You don't have, like, you can't actually balance in terms of, oh, today I'm going to see my kid, tomorrow I'm not. Do you know what I mean? For example, with a newborn up to whatever, up to a certain age, it's like the balance is doing it all at the same time. You can't really separate your time that efficiently, because every 2 hours they need to breastfeed or whatever it is. It's like you can't.
Yeah.
You just have to do both things.
It's also not healthy in terms of, like, resentment.
Yeah,
as well.
yeah, exactly.
If you feel like the kid has dominated however many years of your life, or how much, if the kid's taken a bunch of me time away, it's like, that's only going to breed resentment and contempt, you know? It's like, you get to a teenager or whatever, it's like, I gave up my life, and the kid's like,
all of
I
that.
didn't-
You're like, what? I didn't ask to be here.
Like, what?
Yeah, that's like the worst thing. That speaks about it in that book as well. And it's just saying that you also have to understand that, like, newborn to 2-year-old, 3-year-old is just a time that requires more of your time. So, like, you just have to accept that as well. And you have to be like, when those times when you're feeling irritated, like, oh, I don't want to talk to you, I just want to watch Netflix, I want to talk to whoever. It's like, you need to understand that it's only 3 years or 2 years of the rest of your life that they're going to need this much time from you. And every year gets a little less of your time. And it's like, you've made that decision to have this child, and you just have to be prepared to do that. It doesn't mean, like, the rest of your life goes out the window, but you just have to, like, it's okay that this person needs this from you to survive, not just physically but intellectually, everything, and that's your job.
I read about the neuroplasticity of a child in the language, like, phonetically. This is more physical than just the actual brain. All of the different ways of speaking language, so, like, the way that the mouth is shaped in certain different languages, like, you know how English people might struggle to roll their R's if they're speaking Spanish, and if they're French or whatever, and that goes all the way across the board.
Yeah.
All of those postures will be formed in a child in the first 18 months. You won't be able to have that foundation in their mind afterwards. It will only ever be like an impression. So exposing your kid to just, like, recordings of loads of different languages will better enable it in the future to be able to repeat those phonetics, which is really interesting, I think. But just having, like, a Serbian song in the background playing while they're growing up, or a Chinese song, or what, like, any song will better help them understand language and symbols and shapes further along in their life. That's
it's amazing. I remember, like, learning something similar. I did English language at A-level, and in the second year it was about language development and acquisition. And it was just like all the synapses that sync together in your brain before a certain age are like just the best thing. After that, that's why it becomes 3 times as hard to learn a language or however.
Yeah.
Because ours brain just doesn't work as quickly and the connections aren't made.
I don't know about you, but I think if I ever have a kid, I'm just going to run so many experiments.
Yeah.
So many experiments. I'm like, right, it's time for Dave's 1 hour 1 hour in the reflection chamber.
Yeah.
Little speaker, little Chinese symphony with a little fucking Russian Dostoevsky reading, just like planting all of these wild seeds in the mind. Yeah, right, what happens?
Yeah. When you do that. Because it's always, even when you have interviews with different artists, they're always like, when I was a kid, my mum used to do this, my dad used to do this, he used to make me watch this or listen to this. And at the time, you don't care at all.
Yeah.
You're like, I don't care. This isn't interesting to me.
Are you speaking from experience there?
Yeah.
So is your dad the reason, or your mum the reason you got into filmmaking? Would you say that filmmaking is your first foray into your artistic expression?
No, acting.
Okay.
Yeah. But I don't think that was from I mean, they both love film. And so as I got older, I think it informed my taste in film. But when I was a kid, I was always like creating. I'm the only child, so I was just always left to my own playing devices. So I used to always create stories with like little plastic animals, and that's just what I did every day. I would have a new story. I'd have names for all of these toys. So I was always creating stories. But I just mean in the sense of like, my mum always used to take me to art galleries.
And you just wanted to go to Wacky Warehouse.
I don't want to go to the Tate. So boring. For example. And now...
You got to pay 18 quid just to get in the fucking place.
But now you get to a point and you're like, you appreciate the art, and do you know what I mean? You can discover that without your parents having taken you there, of course. But I remember when I first went to the Tate and appreciated it, I had like a flashback
of being in there as a kid.
And I was like, oh yeah, I used to hate this. Maybe that's now why I like it. Or you did actually find it interesting, but you would have never admitted it. Stuff like that. And yeah, my dad used to make me watch. My mum was more like responsible, sensible in the sense of you can't watch anything over 18.
No Hellraiser,
all of that stuff. Whereas
old.
My dad was like, watch this, man, it's great. Like, so I'd be watching these things.
Irreversible. And you're like, I don't know if I should be watching this. I'm 10.
I'd be watching these things that I didn't understand, going back to that Miyazaki quote. But then, yeah, in the future, you're like, oh, yeah, my dad made me watch that, and now I understand it, and blah, blah, blah. So, making your kids sit in a room with whatever.
Clockwork Orange style. Eyes open. Tarkovsky on the big screen.
Clockwork Orange would definitely be traumatic.
No, but you know the scene where he's just in front of the screen. And you're just like, right, here you go, programming. But I kind of do wish that happened to me a little bit. I kind of wish that my mum ran experiments on me. Would have been wild. I mean, she did run an experiment, but it's not like that kind of experiment. It's just like the keep 'em alive experiment.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do think about my own childhood and been like, I do wish there was more of appreciation for the arts. I feel like I was so late getting into it. I had like no respect for it. I had a really good ear for music, but in terms of like fine art, and I read Harry Potter, but other than that, I didn't read a book until I was like 18, 19. So I do think I missed out a little bit. But then also maybe it created this desire in me to be like, I have so much catching up to do.
Yeah, discovery.
And then just like, then I make a podcast because I want to just know
everything
more. You know? So maybe everything is how it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Is there what's keeping you curious at the moment? But I feel like I'm going to ask a question, and it's always just going to be like, I'm having a fucking kid.
The baby.
Mate. Like, I don't really think about much else.
I don't, you know.
I know.
To be honest.
I can imagine, which is why I'm kind of struggling to think of...
I actually struggled with it.
Struggled with what?
Just thinking about, like, being so distracted by the baby.
Yeah.
When I needed to do work. And it was just so distracting. Like, all I wanted to do was just watch YouTube videos of baby stuff. And, like, Google what I need, and I guess the whole nesting instinct kind of kicks in at some point, and that's all you want to do. And then like baby brain is a real thing
where you just get absolved and
or you can't remember, you forget things, you just can't concentrate on anything. And like felt like I was going mad, so I looked up and it was like some crazy statistic. So many women can't actually concentrate on a task while they're pregnant, because as much as your body's changing, your brain is also putting in the same amount of effort to grow this person. So it's like, it's not just that you're distracted in a romantic sense, it's like you're actually
like a portion
your brain
of your
can't,
brain power is being
used.
You're running another
somewhere
else.
Exactly. And then I got through that phase and now I'm okay again, but now I'm just distracted because it's so soon, so it kind of takes up all my free thought. We had a Q&A with international sales agents, and they were talking about art house films and how sometimes like with a US or UK filmmaker who's done their debut film and it does well, and then they get sucked into like the Netflix world, and they were trying to think of people who have successfully come back out of the Netflix world
to go do big pictures.
They get sucked into Netflix to do like, they get a big budget to do a big film when they've just done like their debut arty type film. And they were just trying to say like they were trying to think of examples of who's come back out of the Netflix world and gone back to doing like good, I guess, I don't know, more artistic, more to their taste,
less compromised
work. I never thought of it as that. I always thought of it as, oh, let me get this Netflix money. Do you know what I mean?
Not knowing that it's a black hole.
I didn't ever think of it as, oh, I'm selling my soul, like I'm commercializing myself. So that was interesting for me to hear.
It might not even be a thing of where people want to come out of it, though.
No, yeah, exactly. Like I don't even think you realize, well, I don't know because I'm not in that position, but you might not even realize that that's what's happening to you, because you're like, yeah, I got the Netflix stone, man, like I've blown.
Yeah, right.
Do you know what I mean? You don't, and that's what you aim for, because you know it's a good platform. Like I said before, depending on what it is you're making, Netflix might be exactly the right platform for everyone to see this film or whatever it is. And then you don't even realize like, oh, how do I go back to making these Curzon type these Curzon type films,
these scraped together low budget sacrifice films where I have to like kill myself to get them made. As a director who's wrote the film and is also an actress, how difficult is it for you to be behind the camera and looking through that lens, literally, but also knowing when someone's giving a good performance? Like, how do you know?
I think because I started with acting, I learned basically all of my other skill set through acting. Performance is always the most important thing for me in anything I make, so that's always my priority. I'm not seasoned or particularly good at the technical side of filmmaking, which is where I lay all my trust in the DP and
collaboration. But you're like, I know a good story.
Yeah, I know a good story and I know a good performance. And I don't know how I do. It's just something that comes naturally to me.
But if you were to boil it down to what are you looking for, I know it's obviously a multitude of things. So what things are in that?
I think mainly is truth. And if I believe you. It's really hard to pretend to tell the truth, which is what you're doing. You're like, acting is being truthful under imaginary circumstances, and that is difficult to do. Like, And loads of people think it's easy. Like, people are like, oh, yeah, I'll do that. Let me be in your film. And then you put them in front of the camera. Well, I wouldn't, because I wouldn't believe them. But, for example, you put someone in front of the camera and they say one line and you're like, what? That just has no... It's really hard to explain without seeing. Like, you know, even the average audience member will know if they're watching bad acting.
Yeah.
And they won't be able to tell you why. But they know, this isn't good. And that's because the truth just isn't there. And it's hard to, like, actors have to like free themselves from their own conscience to be free enough to tell some kind of truth, and act like no one's watching you and all the rest of it.
When I spoke to Will Poulter about his performances and we spoke just after The Revenant, which was like pretty groundbreaking role for him.
Yeah.
He stood by the fact that a perfect performance doesn't exist. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I agree.
What makes it so unattainable?
When you've got to day 7 of filming, or even of a show in the theatre's case, you know your character more than you did on day 1, but that stuff's already out there. It's already on camera. You can't just be like, actually, guys, I've made a better decision now about that scene. Can we go back and do it? So, and you're constantly learning about this person as you work. Even after the film comes out, you'll watch it and you'll be like, oh, no, actually, I think that might have been a better decision for that character in that scene.
But that's only imperfect because you're judging it.
But then how else do you judge perfection if not through your own lens?
Maybe it's non-judgment.
Yeah.
Maybe if you experience something and you're like, I haven't judged anything for the last 2 hours, that was a perfect performance.
Yeah. I mean, I think I've felt, but mainly in classes, not ever on the job, I've felt like a perfect moment. Maybe not the whole scene, but I've definitely felt in like drama class, acting class, a moment, and I've been like, that I could not have done that better. Like, I really believed myself and I felt that.
So that's the obstruction, is that you're split.
Yeah.
There's always the character and the performer. So it's bringing the two lines as close together.
Yeah.
Do you feel like anyone has, in any film you've ever seen, or anyone you've ever worked with, or even yourself, anyone who's ever brought those lines, or who do you feel like has brought them as close together as possible?
I think, I don't know if it's particular people. I prefer to be like, say, a character in a film, do you know what I mean? Rather than them hitting it on the head every performance.
Okay.
I think it's more like, for this character, you really got there. Like, even I watched The Joker the other day, and I think Joaquin is amazing in it.
Did you like it?
I did like it.
Okay.
You didn't like it?
I did not like it.
Okay.
I didn't love it.
Okay.
Joaquin was amazing. It's not his best performance, but he's still great.
Yeah.
I felt like the direction was a bit muted. I feel like it would have been impossible to make a bad film with just a camera on Joaquin Phoenix and the story, because the character's great, the story's great, Joaquin's great.
Yeah.
All of the individual things are great. I know, I feel like maybe, I still don't know what it is. I haven't reflected on it too much. It was lacking something for me.
Okay.
I don't know what it is yet. But I saw Ad Astra.
I haven't seen that.
Now that was a fucking brilliant movie.
Really?
Yeah.
I keep thinking, I don't know, I've been turned off of it because I feel like, how many middle-aged white actors can they get to play like the spaceman?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like everyone's had a go.
Yeah, no, for sure.
So now when I saw it, I thought, again?
It's not a similar story though.
Okay, cool.
It's got my favourite opening shot
Yeah.
of a film ever.
Wow.
It was so good. I was so blown away by it. And the film's just great. And it's nuanced, which I think is important to both of us. Yeah, I don't know. I felt Joker just didn't do it for me.
No.
Good film.
Yeah,
well
I liked
worth
it.
a watch. Well worth the admission.
Yeah, definitely.
But I didn't leave it with anything more than I went in with. It's interesting that you don't consider the actor when you're considering a performance.
No, but then okay, for example, like one of my favorite characters is Thomas Shelby in Peaky Blinders.
Okay, I haven't seen it.
And Thomas Shelby's played by Cillian Murphy.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's enough for me to be like, he's one of my favorite actors. But sometimes it isn't. Sometimes it's like, oh, maybe they need to have, in my eyes, another role, another film where I felt that from them in order for me to say,
No, yeah, I get
your favorite.
I get it completely.
Yeah.
I think for me, what I look for is I'm like, maybe it's not the right way to look at it, but I'm like, wow, that actor, whoever it is, they are completely gone into this character. And when the actor themselves are gone, then I'm like, this is as perfect as it can be. Doesn't matter what actually happens. Doesn't even matter about the aesthetics of the performance, but it's the absence of the performer that makes me believe in a perfect performance.
But then how do you know how absent they are? You don't know, because you don't know the performer.
That's true.
So it's like...
But I feel it.
Yeah.
I think you feel it. I think it is one of those intuitive things of where you're like, you believe so wholeheartedly in the character. Like Joker, he wasn't all the way gone in that.
Don't you think?
You see, it's really weird to explain, but you see little glimpses.
Yeah. But then it's really hard, like from a performer's point of view. Maybe it's different because you don't act. Maybe.
I'm acting like a podcast host right now.
I mean, in the performative sense.
I know.
Because there's some... Okay, like, let's say Denzel Washington, for example. He's terrific. Not just him, but it's for example, that popped into my head. There's things that I see him do that I know is Denzel.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, he always has that facial expression.
Yeah.
Which doesn't mean that he's not fully there. It's just like...
But it does though, because the character wouldn't make that
No,
facial
but
expression.
what else can you... Like, all you have, your tools are your body. So you only have so many... There's only so many ways your face can move. Do you know what I mean? There's only so much, like... Everything you bring to a character is... You're still the... Otherwise, do you know what I mean? It could be moldable to any person, but it's not. You got the role because there's something within you that means that you're best to tell that character and that story. So you have to use the tools you have, which is like, yeah, you can separate yourself to a degree, but you're still using your own experiences and your own understanding of the world and your own, like, the energy that lives within your skin to tell this story and to embody this person. So parts of you always linger, which is why some people, like Heath Ledger, for example, which is why it's difficult to separate yourself, because there's something in you that relates so heavily to this person.
Transparency is the best way for me to explain. Once the performer is transparent and it's just a vehicle for the energy of the character to come through. And I think that's why those physical transformations in film are so... Like Joaquin Phoenix, his physicality in the film is probably the most impressive part of it.
And I think that's... I think that is for me anyway, that's the best tool that I have, like, come to understand. That's the best tool. It's the best segue into another character, because as soon as you change how you move and how you speak, you feel like someone else.
So the mannerisms and the habits and the things that aren't consciously happening, that I guess people perceive it the other way around sometimes, like it's the speech and all of that, the words, and it's actually the unconscious things that once they belong to somebody else, then we're starting to talk about perfection, or at least like transparency.
Yeah, and even like what helps me is like the energy of a character as well. Like if I'm quite a slow person, like I take my time, I'm really kind of, I don't rush, but as soon as you think, so say my energy level is a 7, and as soon as you say, yeah, this character's energy level is a 10, then you know, oh, I'm gonna be picking up my cup quicker and doing all this, and
Yeah.
then it makes you feel different. And some people can do that with emotion and emotion memory and emotional recall and everything else. But for me, it just helps physically. The physical change is what helps me the most.
But you don't believe it's possible for a performer to fully become the character?
I don't know.
I guess it's a process.
I don't know. I just know from experience that the feeling of perfection is a bit obsolete.
For sure. I don't really subscribe to the idea of completeness or perfection.
Yeah.
Part of me does feel like, oh, you know, the performer will always be there. Something will always be there watching the performance happen. But I guess it's like, can an actor maintain that presence of character throughout a whole movie, throughout a
You
whole
can,
shoot?
definitely.
Then that's perfection.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. It's perfection from like someone who's only the person knows what they haven't done.
Okay.
Is what I mean.
Yeah.
I don't mean like it can't be perceived as perfect, but only you know what you could have done more.
Okay.
In that way. And maybe sometimes that would be amazing to reach a level where maybe me and Will are too young to have reached that level where we're like, oh, I've done this enough times that now I know, yeah, that film, I smashed it the whole way through. And I wouldn't change a thing. But I haven't experienced that yet.
Well, you will one day.
One day.
I'm certain. Have you seen it's not Scanner Darkly. It's Waking Life, Richard Linklater. So there's a scene in that. It's like a documentary, but not a documentary. Some scenes are scripted, but his stuff's like... Have you seen his stuff before? Before Sunrise, Boyhood.
I've born with Boyhood, yeah.
Yeah. Some of it's doc, some of it's not, but it's all animated, like all rotoscoped.
Yeah.
It's all really trippy. But there's this one scene, I think it's with a script writer, or he might even just be some quirky dude, but he is speaking to the boy who's awake in a dream but is like walking around, and he speaks about holy moments, and he's like, you're not looking for anything that's really sustained or like really long, but it's just about finding a holy moment and trying to stay in it for as long as possible.
Yeah.
And I feel like finding the rhythm of a song or emotional center, I heard someone say yesterday about it, but finding that holy moment and then stretching it out for 2 hours, 3 minutes, whatever your art form is, it's hard.
Yeah.
Finding that point of penetration. And sometimes you might even find it through my own experience of like, you get to the last verse of a song and then you get into it and you're like, oh, I've got to go all the way back now and tie it all into that place.
Yeah.
But finding that point of entry of sincerity, of a holy moment, like can you think of a time where you've been in that place where you're like, there it is?
Yeah, literally only, like I said before, only in rehearsals or acting class.
How do you grasp onto it and learn from it?
You never forget those moments, which is helpful. And when those moments happen, I always like write down how I got there. Like, what did I do? What was done to me that helped me get there? Like in one of the scenes we were doing in class, I was playing this character and I was in this court scene. And at the end of the scene, it's like she lets out this wail. And I was like, oh God, how am I going to do that truthfully?
Yeah.
And, but obviously I have my teachers there in the class. And so she made me like do the scene. I was sitting on like a chair and I had to kind of wind my body around the chair, so I felt really restricted. So we weren't meant to learn the scene, so someone had to hold the script up in front of me as I was acting. And so first we did it that way, and then she did it another way where, as I was doing it, the rest of the class were like banging on the floor. to make, just because it just adds like atmosphere.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, I think after like, by my second run through, like I got to the point and I wailed and I was crying and I was like, yeah, this is real. And then it's like, okay, but on the day there wouldn't be anyone banging on the floor and I can't tie myself to a chair. So then you just have to think of ways to recreate that, or figure out, not even think of ways, but yeah, just figure out
how to unlock that door.
Yeah, how to unlock that door. Because once, the beautiful thing is that you can do it.
Yeah.
That's the best feeling ever. It's like, oh, I can do it. If I couldn't do it, none of these things would have even helped me. But I can do it.
Numb.
Yeah, I would have been like, no.
Where?
What? Exactly. And once, then it's just about figuring out how to unlock that, which is the difficult thing, especially when you're on set and you're being moved from, okay, we're ready for you now, when you've just eaten 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, and the first AD is like, we only have 2 takes of this shot,
yeah,
so
and
we
now
have to
you
make
get
sure
there,
we get it, okay?
You don't have the time to be able to do that when you're on someone else's time. Maybe it's different on my own sets, but when you're like acting in someone else's work and you're new, it's really hard to be brave enough to ask for that time. And most of the time you'll get it if you ask for it, but it's just being brave enough to be like, actually, can I have 5 minutes? And most directors will say yes, because they know, like, they know the importance of the film. But we just get so used to being like, yeah, I'm good, I'm fine, yeah, okay, I'll do it. So yeah,
it's interesting to imagine craft mastery as the exploitation of one moment. Is it the being able to stretch it out and make it last as long as you want, or is it being able to access it at any time?
I would choose access over being able to stretch it out for as long as I can, because then at least I know how to.
Yeah.
If I lose it after 5 minutes, I know how to get it back.
That's a powerful thing to hear somebody say. That it's not, even if it's something like the guitar, even if it's something like piano, singing, writing, acting, anything, it's about going to that place of like real emotional resonance. It's not scales, it's not techniques, even though it's part of it, and you need tools to be able to express it, and you need the knowledge, but all the mastery of your craft entails is being able to dip in and out of that place,
definitely,
and make it last,
and I think you have to trust yourself in that. Because if something happens in your life, like having a baby, for example, and it takes you away for a matter of months, you can't then be like, oh, because I haven't done this for 3 months, now I can't continue anymore. You have to trust yourself that, and remember how to re-access that thing, whatever it may be.
Well, I guess that's the importance of rituals, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that?
Yeah.
That really clarifies for me the necessity of rituals, because it's about having a map to get back to that place. Like, even for you, if it was banging on the floor, if that worked for you every time, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
But developing your own ritual of how to get back into that place. But then it's difficult, I guess, to not just rely on the ritual itself. Being like, well, I've done that, so why aren't I there?
Yeah, you do have to change it, especially if you're doing something that the end result is some kind of emotional outburst, because your body learns really quickly. And so, yeah, how many times would I have been able to do that and still have the same result? I don't know, probably not a lot of times. Because there's only one first time of experiencing something, and that's what you react to, that's what your body reacts to. And then once you know what's coming subconsciously, you probably won't have the same reaction. So yeah, it's about finding a few different things that you don't wear out.
Yeah.
Like, if I was an actor that always recalled emotional trauma, if I kept recalling when my dad died, it would eventually not do anything for me.
Yeah, you'd get over it.
Yeah.
Because that's, I guess, in the acting process, you're reacting to it and you're resolving it.
Yeah.
Like, let's say you have to cry and you go to that place. There's only so many tears you can cry before you're like, that doesn't do it. It
No,
doesn't
exactly.
do it for me anymore. It's transformed. It's almost like I remember you posted something once that really resonated with me about it was a line from a book, and it was an actor should never do anything with a resting heart rate.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess biologically speaking, it's almost like the fight or flight, which is novelty. The only thing that can create that is a new experience,
Mm-hmm.
which kind of debunks the idea of a ritual in my mind, because it's like you can have everyone banging on the floor again, and you can be tied to a chair, and it's just going to be an abstraction of something that's already come. So your reaction to it is going to be less than sincere.
Yeah.
So it's like really difficult to get a
But
ritual.
the rest, but then you making sure you don't have a resting heart rate. Is a ritual in a sense.
True.
Because it's like, okay, cool, before I do the scene I'm gonna jog around this room twice, at least then I know. I'm like, because most of the time acting, like, let's say it's drama, do you know what I mean? So you're always pretending to be in situations that you would have a high heart rate for, whether it's an awkward conversation, do you know what I mean? Even me telling my mum that I was pregnant, my heart rate in that moment was like
Your best performance yet.
I could have had a heart attack. Do you know what I mean? It's like the fastest, and you feel it. And so then if you're going into a scene like that, for example, and you just sat up from a chair, you're not gonna feel what you need to feel to have a truthful performance. So you need to get your heart at least up to a certain point.
So then as a director, does that make you know that, or my actors might not know it, but I know the best thing to do is to make this situation as realistic for them as possible.
Yeah.
Or as novel for them as possible, instead of, because knowing that, it's irresponsible to then go up.
No, of course, but that's what makes the difference in directors.
Yeah.
Because in rehearsals for Eli, I'm sure it was Eli. I can't remember. One of my things.
Baby brain.
I always made. Oh no, we were like, because we had the development stuff, we had to go to RADA, the drama school, and actors came in to workshop some scenes. So it was like practice for us. So when we were workshopping with these actors, I made them like do laps in the room before going into the scene. Because I felt that's what the scene needed from my own experience. And maybe the actor doesn't like working that way, but then that's like the director's prerogative. Do you know what I mean? Of course, be collaborative and see what helps them. But you can always say, oh, why don't you try doing this?
Yeah.
And see if it works for you. And yeah, that's the difference in directors, I guess, because some people would never ask you to do that and some would. And that's what creates, differences.
It also creates court cases and stuff.
I twisted my ankle because she made me run before the scene.
It does explain, how some directors get tarnished with a brush of being like brutal or mad.
She's crazy.
Or lack of compassion or like slave driver or something. Like Lynn Ramsey's got a terrible reputation in the game, but she demands a certain performance from her characters. Like they have to be on edge, which means I have to keep directing them to the edge. And there's such a fine, like, you can't be you can if you want to make, definitely maybe, or The Notebook or something, but if you want your films to have any kind of energy or intensity, you have to provoke your your actors. You have to provoke your characters.
Because as much as like as much experience as you have as an actor, you always want help. Like, it's hard. I always want to be like, those are the moments when I'm acting. It's like I enjoy having some kind of spoon feeding, because I'm like, help me suggest something else that will get me here,
frighten me or stimulate me,
help me get there. And sometimes it's like, I did that Maverick Sabre video, and there was a scene on the floor and I had to cry, and I was thinking about it the whole shoot, even before we got there. I thought, how am I going to do this? And the one thing that helped me in that moment was Sean, the director, saying, you have all the time in the world. And like, that helped me the most. He didn't really have to provoke me in any way, I think, because the pressure and like the pressure of me feeling like I was on someone else's time was what would have caused me to not be able to get there. But as soon as he said, like, we're on your time, I was able to just be like, okay, let me just lie on this floor.
The relief floods through and brings everything else with it.
So there's so many different ways that you can do that. But I think when it's something tender like that, I just think, yeah, the actor needs to know, like, this is fine. We're gonna get there, and I'm here, like, with you to help you. Yeah.
And that's your partner's job on the day of arrival.
Yes, on Labor Day.
It's going to direct you to the greatest performance of your life. The whole rest of your career, you're going to be chasing that performance.
I'm really gonna think. I feel like I'm gonna be aware of, like, how I feel. It's weird when you're an actor. Like, when my mom told me that my dad died, I was suddenly so aware of how I felt in that moment. Like, it was as if I was like, oh, let me remember how I feel in this moment. It was so weird. It was like one of the first thoughts that came to my head.
What was?
Processing how I felt in that moment.
So it's almost like a detachment.
Yeah, I was like, how do I feel right now? I don't know. Maybe I don't know if it's because of, like, all the acting stuff I've done, where you're always trying to access those moments. It just made me, one of my thoughts, I was like, standing there. It's kind of like I saw myself.
Was this when your mum told you about your dad?
Yeah. It's like I saw myself, like, an outer body kind of thing. And I was looking down on myself and I thought, what am I doing right now? How do I feel?
How do I respond?
Yeah, how am I?
What?
These are those moments in life where you're like, how do you respond to this?
So.
And I feel like I'm going to be like that with the baby.
What choice did you make in that moment?
I didn't cry straight away. I just stood there. And I remember just asked her like 3 questions before it kind of hit me, before I kind of accepted that it was true. It was almost like I had to know these 3 facts or whatever they were before I could be like, oh, okay, now I believe it. And I think I sat down. I didn't cry, like, straight away, which is useful to know just in life. And when you're
what's the lesson there?
In acting, like, in acting stuff.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
like,
it's not
and
straight to hysteria.
Yeah, exactly. People don't do that. Don't always do that. I was watching A Confession on ITV. It's a true story about this guy who kills these 2 young women in a taxi. But basically they tell the 2 mums that they found the body of their daughter, and their reactions are so completely different. Like, one kind of just sits down, and the other one, as soon as the police knock on her door, she opens the door, she's already in hysterics. As soon as that, they haven't even said anything. But yeah, it just made me think about the differences in reactions, I guess.
And the choices that are open to us in those moments.
Yeah.
And as overwhelming as they can be, also liberating, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I read a psychological study that a scientist did in World War II, and he would go in the fighter planes with the pilots, and most of them were like mid-20s, had no clue what was going on. All they knew was, like, how to fly the plane or how to shoot the gun or whatever. And he observed all of their characteristics and personalities and kind of labelled them, was like, that's the nervous one, that's the talkative one.
Yeah.
Basically observed how they all reacted under pressure and put them in, like, archetypes, so that he could distinguish them and also have a point of reference for what would happen next, which was whenever they were under extreme pressure, extreme stress and extreme trauma, the plane's been shot down, some airstrikes happening, or they are responsible for a lot of people's lives, all of their archetypal roles, all their characters faded away, and they all became ice cold, present, in the best position to make the best possible decision, and was just like, in these moments of
fight and flight.
Yeah, but I guess it's moments of departure.
Yeah.
Because you're leaving a part of your life and you're stepping into something completely unknown, and you're aware that that's happening, and you're presented with the limitless opportunities. And for them, it was like, stay calm, do the best you can do, respond to this in the best way and the most responsible way that you can, which is interesting, like in your moment, which I guess is like one of the biggest turning points of your life. You have that same detachment, but not with the negative connotations of the word. I guess the necessary detachment to make the best possible decision.
Yeah, definitely. Like it was just, and I remember thinking at the time, like, this is weird. Why am I detached in that, in the non-negative sense? But it's true. It's like you literally, because I don't even remember who I was before I got that news. Like, I don't remember. It's like the same, like, as soon as I found out I was pregnant, I don't know who before that moment, I was someone different. And, you have this, like, overwhelming understanding that your life is about to change. And you just have this weird kind of out of body moment that's like, oh, now I'm stepping over this line, into something new. And what do I do with that? And how does this new person react to that news?
Who do I want to be?
Yeah. It's weird because you have these decisions, but there's always only one decision you're going to make.
I like to think of alternate versions of myself sometimes.
Me too.
Pour one out for the version of me that didn't make it back from some moments, or went left in other moments. It's comforting to know that, like, I'm where I am, and how different things could be in every moment too. Even in the bad moments, even in the good moments. It creates humility in the good moments and extreme gratitude in the bad moments. And I think that's a very profound way to end our conversation.
Yes. Lessons.
And in like 4 weeks, you'll be a completely new person again.
Crazy.
And there'll be another new person to come and goo goo gaga all on the microphone.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, thank you for coming and chatting
Thank you for having me.
I wish you all of the best.
Thank you.
I think you're going to do a fantastic job.
I hope so. I believe so.
Part of me was hoping for an on-air birth, but then also once I thought about that, I was like, I'm not equipped for any of that.
That would be, That
would have been mental. Glad that didn't happen.
Not the best thing.
No, because you don't want to give birth north of the river when you're from south, because that is a nightmare.
No, we've got to keep it south.
Thank you for coming to talk to me. I appreciate it. The end.
The end.